Hello and welcome to our webinar. Today is all about trying to answer the questions you may have in relation to our application for Key Action to Strategic Partnerships funding in the field under 2019 call. Just to introduce ourselves again, for those of you who recently joined us, my name is Indra and I work in the Erasmus Plus team at Acoris UK. Presenting with me today is my colleague Rahil, and my colleague Zoe and Lana will be answering your questions via questions facility. This webinar is aimed at applications looking to apply for funding under the centralized strand of Key Action 2, known as Strategic Partnerships in the field of adult education. It is very important to consider before applying which field your project is most relevant to in terms of addressing the policy and action priorities, and which field is most likely to be impacted by your project results and outcomes. In all cases, the priorities addressed by the project and composition of the partnership must be relevant to the field the application is submitted under. You must take care to complete and submit the application form for the field most relevant to your project. For 2019 call, we have developed the Adult Education Guide for applicants, which can be downloaded from our website. During today's webinar, we will provide you with an overview of information about a number of key topics. Just to give you an overview of what I will be covering in today's webinar, I will be presenting a brief introduction to Key Action 2 Strategic Partnerships in Adult Education. I will then move on to talk about the 3 topics shown on the screen. During the webinar, you will have the chance to vote for which of these topics you would like to hear about in a little more detail. On your right-hand side, from the tool panel, you should be able to download a handout. This contains useful links to support you with the application process. For a step-by-step guide on how to complete the application, please read your Guides for Applicants, which can be found on the Apply for Funding section of our website. You can also learn about hints and tips on completing the application form by listening to our recorded webinar, which is available to download under the News and Events section of our website. Links to these resources can be found in the handout. I would like to remind you, if you haven't already, to watch our pre-recorded webinar. This webinar provides all potential applicants with a run-through of the new web application form and provides hints and tips as well as rules and requirements of the submission process. Please view the webinar which is most relevant to you based on your project type. Before we begin, I would like to remind you of the latest information regarding the participation of UK in Erasmus Plus in light of Brexit. The UK National Agency understands that you may have questions on this subject following the publication of the revised technical notice released by UK government on the 29th January 2019. The UK government and the UKNA continue to recommend applications as submitted to the UK National Agency for 2019 Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Course call for proposals as normal, as it will ensure that organizations and individuals can take part in the programs if a withdrawal agreement is in place. Any queries we receive regarding Brexit today will be noted, and we will aim to respond within 2 working days of this webinar session. I would like to remind you that the latest information about UK's participation in Erasmus Plus after Brexit can be found on the Brexit update page of Erasmus Plus UK website. Please check this page regularly and subscribe to our newsletter to receive the latest updates. Strategic partnerships are cooperation projects which allow organizations to work together to improve the quality of education and training provision, tackle common issues, and share or develop innovative practice. One organization, the applicant, applies for funding on behalf of the whole partnership, and if the project is approved, this partner has overall responsibility for managing the funding and is accountable to the national agency for the project. There are 2 types of strategic partnership you can apply for: innovation or exchange of practices. We will talk more about this later in the session. You need to choose the type of the project within the application form. All strategic partnership projects must involve a consortium of at least three organizations from 3 different program countries. Organizations from partner countries cannot be applicants but can be involved as partners only, where it can be shown that their involvement will bring essential added value to the project in terms of their skills, experience, and expertise. Our advice would be to choose your partners carefully. You may be working with them for several years, and the success of your project depends on them. Make sure you have a good mix of relevant partners with the capacity, skills, experience, and expertise to deliver the project objectives and activities to a good standard. Aim to have a well-balanced partnership where each partner is actively involved in the delivery of the project. You may want to consider including partners with a mix of experience of European cooperation, including where appropriate organizations that are new to Erasmus Plus and/or European partnership working and will benefit from the experience. If you involve new organizations, you may want to include some more experienced partners as well, and have plans in place to ensure that all partners are able to contribute. It is possible to include partners from the other fields of education, training, and youth in a strategic partnership for adult education, where this will help you to achieve the project objectives. If so, you should make it clear in your application how their inclusion will add value and help to achieve the planned objectives, results, and outcomes, which must be relevant to the field you submit the application under. When looking for potential partnerships, you can seek recommendations from trusted partners and/or exploit known links and networks. You can also search for complementary organizations with experience of Erasmus Plus and its predecessor programs via the Erasmus Plus Project Results platform, or use the partner finding tool on the EPALE platform. The funding for strategic partnership is calculated based on the activities and outcomes your project will deliver. There are a number of rules which apply to KA2 Budget, and you can find full details in Part B of the program guide and in our guide for applicants. The funding is intended as a contribution to the cost of running your project and may not cover all costs. The maximum funding available is equivalent to $12,500 per month for the duration of the project, up to a maximum $450,000. However, not all projects will request or receive the maximum funding. The minimum duration for the strategic partnerships is 12 months and the maximum is 36 months. All 2019 call projects must start between 1st September and 31st December 2019, and all projects must finish by 31st August 2022. Strategic partnerships aim to support cooperation, peer learning, and exchange of practices and practice at EU level, as well as promoting sharing, development, and implementation of innovative practices. They enable organizations from different countries to work together to address a common problem, achieve a common aim, and/or develop an innovative solution. All strategic partnerships need to demonstrate a link to the priorities of the action outlined in the program guide. They must address at least one horizontal and sector-specific priority. Where a horizontal priority is selected, applicants must still show how their project is relevant to and has potential to impact on the sector the application has been submitted under, for example, adult education. Priorities could be found on pages 106 to 110 of the program guide. Please be aware that there have been some changes within the priorities. Therefore, you should refer to a new Erasmus Plus program guide and guide for experts for 2019 call. Strategic partnerships are flexible in terms of what they can entail and in size. This means that there is a flexibility in terms of the activities you implement, as long as your application can demonstrate that these activities are appropriate to achieve the objectives set out for the project. The type of strategic partnership to be developed will need to be selected within the application form. This is therefore important to give careful consideration to the type of the project that is best suited to your objectives and the experience and capacity of your partnership. As mentioned in your application, you can select one of the following two types of projects. Firstly, strategic partnerships for innovation, also sometimes referred as development of innovation or supporting innovation projects. These projects are expected to develop innovative outputs and/or undertake intensive dissemination and exploitation activities. Strategic partnerships supporting innovation can request specific funding for intellectual outputs and multiply events in order to support the delivery of their objectives. Secondly, strategic partnerships supporting exchange of good practices. The main objective of these projects is to allow organizations to develop and reinforce networks, increase their capacity to operate at a transnational level, and exchange ideas, practices, and methods. Depending on their objectives, projects may also develop tangible outputs and are still expected to disseminate the results of their activities in a way that is proportionate to the aims and scope of the project. These results and activities will be co-financed through the standard project management and implementation budget, and no separate funding will be available to develop intellectual outputs or multiply events. Due to the complex nature of KA2, we recommend this type of the project as a good entry point for applicants who have been active within the other areas of Erasmus Plus programs, smaller organizations, or less experienced partnerships. How should you choose which type of strategic partnership to apply for? You will need to select the type of strategic partnership at application stage. However, this should be discussed with partners during the initial planning stages, taking into consideration the proposed objectives and activities of the project and the size, capacity, and experience of the partnership. In all cases, applicants should choose the project format which is most appropriate for the delivering the planned project objectives and results, bearing in mind that capacity and experience of the partnership. All applications will be quality assessed in line with the proportionality principle. This means that the scores allocated for the quality award criteria will take into consideration the size and the type of the project and the composition of the partnership. On this slide, we have tried to provide some examples of possible activities. However, this is not an exhaustive list. The specific activities and outputs you plan to deliver will depend on the objectives of your project. Now, let's find out which topic you would like to discuss in more detail. Please choose the topic that you have the most questions about from our pool. Thank you for your answers. It seems that the most important topic of the majority of you is key changes in 2019, which we will cover in more detail. However, we still go through to the other topics within the presentation. In the 2019 call, there have been a few changes which it's important to be aware of. Firstly, we have some changes to the KA2 priorities, both horizontal and field specific. So it is very important to refer to the current guidelines in Part B of the 2019 program guide. For 2019 call, some of the 2018 call priorities have been expanded and made more specific, and therefore it is essential for you to revisit these. For more information on the priorities for the 2019 call, please revisit pages 100 to 106 of the 2019 program guide. As of 2019, Serbia has been incorporated fully into Erasmus Plus program and will actively participate as a non-EU program country. Serbia will continue to appear in the application form as a list of possible destinations. If you have a partner from Serbia within your consortium, extensive justification in line with partner country organizations will no longer be required. As regards to the budget, further clarification has been provided within 2019 program guide in regards to exceptional costs for expensive travel costs. This budget category, introduced last year for learning, teaching, and training activities, allows exceptional costs to be claimed for unusually expensive travel costs for participants in learning, teaching, and training activities. Where claimed, these costs will be utilized to cover the travel for each participant, and therefore the standard grant travel grant amount cannot be requested. Through 2019 and the end of 2017, the European Commission introduced the web application forms for the youth sector and as of 2019, the web application is now applicable for Key Action 2 projects, including adult education. It is compulsory to complete the web form when applying for Key Action 2 funding. Please note that application is no longer a PDF document and must be completed online in your web browser. You will need to use your EU login details to access the web application form. The form has been successfully tested on Internet Explorer, Firefox, and Google Chrome browsers. However, we recommend that where possible to use a PC to complete the form, as some Mac computers are not compatible with the form. Does anyone have any questions regarding these changes? If so, please type them into the question box, which should be in your control panel on the right-hand side, unless you have moved the panel, or if you are watching the webinar on your smart device, it might require a swipe or a click on the main viewing window. I will allow for a few minutes for you to type any questions that you may have. My colleague Zoe would like to read out the question and provide you with the answer. As this was not a selected topic earlier, we will only briefly touch upon this topic. Now, moving on, my colleague Rahil will talk about the Key Action 2 budget, which works in the same way for Key Action 2 WET. Once again, we encourage you to ask questions via question box during the presentation.
Hello, everyone. We would address some key points. The budget for strategic partnership is intended to be a contribution to the cost of delivering the project. There is no formal requirement for matching funding. However, the principle of co-financing applies. Please see pages 258 to 159 of the program guide for more info. This means that the grant is a contribution to the cost of delivering the project and may not cover all costs. The budget is made up of a number of different budget items, some of which are calculated on a unit cost basis, and some of which are calculated on the basis of estimated actual costs. Some budget items, such as intellectual outputs and multiplier events, are only applicable for supporting innovation projects. Other budget items, such as exceptional costs and transnational teaching, training, learning activities, may be applicable for any type of project, but must be strongly justified within the application form in order to be approved. All applicants must refer to the detailed budget guidance on pages 117 till 124 of the 2019 program guide. This guidance outlines definitions of what is considered eligible for funding under each budget heading and any conditions that apply, in addition to explaining how the budget items is calculated. It is very important to ensure that the funding you request for the project is eligible and well justified within the application. Ineligible or unjustified budget items may not be approved. Applicants should design their project budget around the activities and outputs they need to deliver in order to achieve the planned project objectives. The budget forms part of the overall project design, and the coherence and value for money of the budget will be assessed as part of the quality assessment. A good quality application will have a well-designed budget which is realistic, proportionate, and complies with the budget rules. As mentioned earlier, the grant is a contribution to the cost of delivering the project. Some budget items are calculated on the basis of unit costs and some on the basis of estimated actual costs. Some budget items are only available for innovation projects, such as intellectual outputs and multiplier events, and some can only be approved where they are adequately justified. There are 7 different budget items. Project management and implementation. All projects will request project management and implementation funding. This budget item is a lump sum to support the cost of managing and delivering the project. As outlined in the project guide, PMI can be used to co-finance smaller scale activities or local activities, such as developing a basic project website and small-scale dissemination costs. It is calculated based on the number of partners and duration of the project. Exchange of practices projects are finally co-financed co-financed using this budget item. Transnational project meetings. Generally, all Key Action 2 projects will request funding under transnational project meetings to the partners to meet to discuss the project and planned activities. The number and timing of TPMs should be justified and proportionate. This grant is calculated based on unit cost per participant and travel distance band. Intellectual outputs. Innovation projects can request additional funding to deliver intellectual outputs, which must be tangible outputs which are substantial in quality and quantity. A large focus of supporting innovation projects and also intellectual outputs are their potential for wider use, extensive dissemination, and maximized impact. Examples of tangible outputs include curricula, large-scale education materials, open education resources, IT tools, in-depth studies, and peer learning methods. Materials such as project management tools, dissemination plans, project-specific needs analysis, or project evaluation reports will not be considered eligible as intellectual output as they do not meet the requirement to have potential for wider use, dissemination, and impact. It is important to ensure that intellectual outputs are well described within the application form and there is a clear link between the planned output and the project objectives. It is very important to ensure that intellectual outputs will be eligible as described within the 2019 Guide for Applicants and the 2019 Programme Guide. Manager and administration staff costs are expected to be co-financed using the project management and implementation budget unless extensively justified within the application. Finally, multiplier events. Funding for multiplier events is only available for innovation projects which plan to deliver intellectual outputs. This funding is for national or international conferences, events and seminars which are specifically aimed at sharing and disseminating the intellectual outputs developed by the project with a wider audience, beyond the immediate project partners and beneficiaries. Therefore, in order to be eligible for funding, participants must be from organizations external from the consortium. The budget is calculated based on the estimated number of local or international participants. Local means from the country where the event will take place, and international means a participant traveling from a different country. This budget category has a cap of €30,000 per project. Exceptional costs for goods or services. This is a contribution up to 75% of the cost of subcontracting or the purchase of goods and services where these cannot be provided by the project partners themselves for duly justified reasons. This budget item requires detailed specification within the application form, and requests for costs under this heading are expected to be exceptional. So not every project will need them. This budget category has a cap of €50,000 per project. Special needs support. This support project participants with a disability or other specific health need for which additional costs will be incurred. Again, a request for funding under this budget heading must be justified in detail in the application. Learning, teaching, and training activities. Within specific partnership, it is also possible for projects to include transnational learning, teaching, and training activities as learning mobilities, where these are embedded with the project and will clearly support the achievement of the project objectives. The inclusion of these activities needs to be justified within the application. They should not be standalone mobilities, but should deliver benefit to the project as a whole. Where these activities are justified, funding is available to co-finance travel, subsistence, and linguistic support where applicable. Most elements of the budget for learning, training, teaching, and training activities are calculated on the basis of unit costs. However, as mentioned earlier, there is exceptional cost for expensive travel costs, which is intended to co-finance exceptionally expensive travel costs, where the normal unit cost for travel will not cover at least 70% of the travel costs. This must be justified in detail within the application. Where justified, it's possible to request up to 80% of the expected actual costs. Do we have any questions related to the budget? If so, please type them into the question box and we'll do our best to answer.
Okay, great. So we've actually received a question in regards to exceptional costs for travel costs and to whether the funds provided for these include the transportation of equipment for teaching, learning and training activities, so things such as banners and stands. However, unfortunately, the exceptional cost for travel cost budget only relates to the actual travel account expense and is only applicable if the travel is of a very long and exceptional distance. In order to fund certain items such as banners and the stands or any other supporting materials, then it's expected that the funding within the project management and implementation budget will be utilised. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Joy, for answering that. And now moving to the PIC process. Organizations that have participated in Erasmus Plus previously will already have a PIC number. Nevertheless, this is an important part of the pre-application process, so we'd like to run through some key information about the PIC process, particularly for those of you who are applying for the first time. The information we present is also relevant to experienced applicants. So, before we continue, I'd like to run a quick poll to see how many of you already have a PIC. Thank you all for your answers. It seems like the majority of you already have a PIC. So we'll briefly go through the PIC process. In order to apply for Erasmus Plus funding, the applicant organization and all partners listed in the application must have a participant identification code known as PIC. This is a 9-digit code which links you to key details about your organization on the participant portal. You will not be able to complete the application form without a PIC. Before you start, check whether your organization already has a PIC. We will talk more about how to do this in the next slides. This is very important though, as each organization should only have one PIC for all projects. If your organization hasn't already got a PIC, you'll need to complete a 2-step registration process. Firstly, you will have to have an EU login account. EU login, formerly known as ECAS, is the user authentication portal used for a number of EU tools. You only need to register once on EU login, and once you have login details, you can use them on the different tools, including the participant portal. So if you already registered on EU login, you can skip this first step. Otherwise, the registration process is very simple, and there is guidance available via our website. Please see the link on registering your organization in your handouts. Once you have your EU login, you will be able to access the participant portal to register your organization. Again, refer to the links in your handout for further guidance. As part of the registration process, you will be prompted to input information about your organization and upload the required supporting documents. These documents are needed to prove the legal status and financial capacity of your organization, and it is essential that the information on these documents matches the information input on the participant portal itself. If your organization already has a PIC, you do not need to register for another one. You'll need to use the existing PIC, but you must ensure that all the information about your organization on the participant portal is correct and up to date. You may need to make some changes, so please allow time for this important step. All of your partners will also need to have a PIC and have uploaded all the necessary supporting documents onto the participant portal before you submit your application. All partners are also required to submit signed partner mandates as annexes to the application. You can download the partner mandate templates from our website. You will need to ensure that information such as the name of the organization, address, and legal representative on the partner mandate is identical to the information in the application form. Otherwise, the partner mandate will not be accepted. The slide gives answer to some common questions about the PIC registration process. Firstly, which participant portals we use? always ensure that you are registered on the correct participant portal, which is Education, Audiovisual, Culture, Citizenship and Volunteering Participant Portal. You can see the link on the screen, and it is also provided within our guidance for applicants. Secondly, how can you check your organization's PIC? If you aren't sure whether your organization has a PIC or what the PIC code is, you can search for your PIC within the participant portal by selecting Search from the Organizations tab. We are also frequently asked about which supporting documents need to be uploaded. As an applicant, you need to upload both a legal entity form and financial identification form. Both forms need to be accompanied by supporting documents. For the legal entity form, you will need to provide documents of incorporation or registration which provide the legal status of the organization. For financial identification form, you will need to provide the recent bank statement. If you have VAT number, you will need to provide VAT registration certificate. Please be aware that your partners will also need to upload a legal entity form for their organization and the required supporting documents. Once registered, all organizations must have their legal status validated by the national agency in their country. This applies to both applicants and partner organizations. Organizations cannot receive Erasmus Plus funding until they have been validated. To enable the UK National Agency to provide your organization, to validate your organization, you will need to upload certain documents onto the participant portal. As mentioned, both you and your partners must upload the legal entity form to the participant portal, as well as supporting documents for this form. Please be aware that there are 3 types of legal entity documents available: individual, private company, and public entity. Please choose the appropriate legal entity form depending on whether your organization is a private company or a public entity. For Key Action to Strategic Partnerships projects, you should not use the individual legal entity form. For more information and specific examples, please visit our website. The legal entity form must be completed in full and must be accompanied by evidence of your organization's legal status. These supporting documents must be consistent with the information about your organization provided on both the participant portal and the legal entity form. As an applicant, you will also need to upload the financial identification form. The financial identification form should be signed, dated, and stamped by your bank, or alternatively, should be accompanied by a recent bank statement for the given bank account. You should provide details for an account that your grant can be paid into and which is set up to receive payments in euros. If your organization is awarded funding, at a later stage you will be asked to upload a refined bank details form, and you will need to ensure that the information on this form is consistent with the financial identification form. Please note that the organization must be validated in order for your application to be considered for funding. However, validation is a separate process and not linked to the assessment of your application. Therefore, if your organization is validated, it does not automatically imply that your application has been successful. Links to the templates for the legal entity form and financial identification form can be found in your handout. If you have applied for Erasmus Plus funding before and have already been validated by the UK National Agency, you will still need to ensure that the above documents are correct and up to date. Outdated documents cannot be deleted, but you can upload another document with the updated information. Please ensure that the updated documents uploaded on the participant portal are clearly named, including the date of update to avoid confusion. If you have any specific queries about the PIC registration or validation process, please type them in the questions box now. As we are approaching to the end of the webinar today, but before we close, are there any other questions at this point? If so, please continue to add them to the questions box.
Hi everyone. So we've just received a further question in regards to PIP validation and how long the process takes. So like any process really, it's just about ensuring that the contact people for the validation are available at all times, following the steps which Matthew outlined in regards to the uploading of the legal entity form and the financial identification form, and ensuring that all of that information is correct and consistent and updated, ensures that the validation process will run smoothly. So we can't give any specific timeframes, however, hopefully as quick as possible, including your ease of communication with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zoe. So we have a final poll of this session, and we would like to know is your organization ready to submit a key action to adult education application? Thank you all for your answers. To help you with your application, we will now finish with further guidance. Before we finish today, I'd like to mention where you can find additional information and guidance in the run-up to the deadline, which is Thursday, 21st of March 2019 at 11 a.m. UK time. Detailed guides for applicants which provide guidance on how to complete and submit the application forms are available on our Erasmus Plus website. There are separate guides for VET and adult education, so please make sure you refer to the correct one. As discussed, you can listen to our pre-recorded application support webinar depending on the project type. The link to where they can be viewed is in your handout. If you haven't done so already, please sign up to our newsletter, as this provides all the most up-to-date information about the call and the Erasmus Plus program. On our website, you can also find other important information and key documents to support you with completing your application. If you have further queries about applying for Key Action to Adult Education after referring to the guidance, please contact our helpline by phone or email, and our team will be happy to help you. The contact details are coming up. That brings us to the end of our webinar today. Thank you all for your attention and participation. We hope you found it very useful. We'll be around for a few more minutes to answer any final questions, and if there are any more that come up after today, do contact our helpline via the details shown on the screen. Do also keep an eye on the Erasmus Plus website for news and further guidance. We hope you find this session useful today. Once you leave the webinar, please can you complete the feedback form which will appear after you leave the webinar. We wish you luck with your future applications.